Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce the three leaders who are in the forefront of the food revolution. Tonight we have Chef David Hawksworth, who is not only a Michelin-trained chef, but also a successful entrepreneur with his self-titled restaurant, Hawksworth, and a new restaurant, a name that's yet to be disclosed. So maybe tonight we'll find out what that is. So please join me in welcoming Chef Hawksworth to the stage.
Thank you.
You gotta like that music. Christine Day has had leading roles at both Starbucks and Lululemon and is now the CEO of Luvo, who's revolutionizing the frozen food industry. So please welcome Christine Day to the stage. An entrepreneur and a generous philanthropist, Frank Juster knows the business world inside out. Not only is he the founder of Lionsgate Entertainment and CEO of the Fiore Group, this self-proclaimed foodie has diversified his investment portfolio of natural resources to food and lifestyle companies like Dominica Fiore, Canada's Own Food, Y Yoga, Alter Echo, Modern Farmer Media, and Thunderbird Films. Please welcome to the stage, Frank Justra. And finally, leading the discussion tonight, a woman who's always starting something. Please welcome our moderator, Global Nationals weekend anchor and BC correspondent, Robin Gill.
Thanks so much for having me. So you know what, let's just get... Is my mic not on? Can you hear me now?
No.
Now you can. No. It's coming out now. Should be on. It's on. Can you hear me now? I'm just going to take this mic. Hello, now you can hear me. Sorry about that. I'm used to technical malfunctions all the time. Trust me, TV is smoke and mirrors. Let's just start off with the fact that we have a room full of entrepreneurs here. The theme is tapping into the food revolution. How has food influenced your life? Let's start with you, Christine.
Well, I think I grew up in a family where food was nourishment and family gatherings, big Irish family. And I had a mother who home-cooked meals for us, including our treats and our lunch every day. I used to be the kid that wanted the ding-dong because I never was allowed to have it. But it also has influenced me as an adult, and personally why I've started the company I've started is because my mother has diabetes due to an illness with her pancreas. And going to the grocery store and trying to find food that met the requirements of low sugar, low sodium, and with things that my dad would actually eat, we couldn't find. So I said somebody has to do something about it, and it just became me.
Frank, I know you're a foodie, and I know you like to cook for your family, so that's obviously your impetus for this, but there's more to that for you.
I grew up as, obviously, we immigrated here from Argentina when I was 9, and coming from an Italian family, it's all about food. It's like Irish times 10. So we always ate very healthy. We had a garden. As a matter of fact, when we arrived here, and we were weirded out by the fact that other kids were eating junk food and candies, we just didn't get it. And we never grew up with that. So our whole life was based around healthy foods, which included olive oil and vegetables and all the things that I love. And so then I started cooking when I was in my early 20s, and I fell in love with the cooking thing. And I'm not trained like David is, but sort of taught myself. And it was all about just being passionate about the food. I love food. I live for food. Everything I do is about food. When I have my friends over, it's all about food. The kitchen is the center of the universe. And to me, food is sexy. And, and the cooking is the best foreplay. I mean, it's amazing.
Chef, is food sexy?
Yeah, well, it rules my life. I've worked in restaurants from probably the age of about 14, and when I was training here, I had 3 jobs at one time, and it's just it's all I'm consumed with it, obviously, and from travel to anything really, it's all consuming. I don't know if it's the same for everybody out there, but it's definitely it's an interesting life, and I can't explain how it just enriches when you have something that's really tasty and fresh, and it just makes your day. You're eating 3 times a day, or 5 or 6 or whatever it is, but it means the world to me for sure.
I know that you were so busy today that you didn't have time for breakfast or lunch because you're launching a new restaurant, but we're going to get to that later. I just want to drop a few hints here and there. Let's get to something more hard news. What's your feeling around genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs? Frank?
Well, as it turns out, Modern Farmer's next issue will deal with that subject. We made a decision last year that in every issue we were going to tackle something that's very topical, maybe controversial, but very important to the food world. And this next issue will deal with the whole GMO question and ask the question, are they really that bad? And I had a read of the article, and I won't spoil it for you because you'll be now subscribing, hopefully getting the magazine. But it really was an eye-opener for me because I always thought that GMOs were completely bad. And I think they're getting a bad rap because 90% of the technology behind genetically engineered foods is owned by Monsanto. And Monsanto is sort of the Darth Vader of the corporate world. I mean, everybody hates Monsanto, and probably for good reason. I mean, they've had a bit of a checkered past and things like producing chemicals like Agent Orange and DDT, and the fact that they own 90% of the seeds and are in constant battle with all of the farmers and lawsuits has given them a very bad reputation. So their involvement in genetically engineered foods is automatically seen as a bad and evil thing. And I'm not so sure that it is. I think that I don't claim to be an expert, but from reading this article, it seems to me that they're only doing what nature does naturally in terms of the flow of genetic material from one organism to another, and they're just finding a scientific way of doing it. So it's something that would happen in nature anyways. And they're solving a lot of the world's farming problems. And when you look at things like creating drought-proof crops or crops that can uptake fertilizer more easily, a lot of the world needs that technology because you're going to have about 9 billion people to feed here shortly. And I think that, it's something that, anyways, read the article and, make up your own mind.
Yeah,
David, you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, we have to be aware that in 30 years from now, we're going to have 9 billion people on this planet. An interesting fact is, in India, where they grow eggplants enormously, they have a pest there that, the farmers there would use pesticide twice a day, even times, to kind of deal with this. That's not good. When they can make a modification to that plant so now they don't have to use any pesticide, I think that's a bonus. Obviously, there's good and bad with this, and it just, for the small farmer, this is the problem because, how do you deal with you're held captive? So, there's a lot of research, and for 10,000 years we've been modifying plants, right? So, we have to take a deep breath and look at the long term, and I think it's not all bad.
So, Christine, do you think there's too much media hype around GMOs?
I think the issue is frankly complex, and I think we've collapsed a lot of issues together. We have environmental concerns, it's like, what are the weed killers that particularly Monsanto creates used on? And for instance, milkweed has been eradicated by about 51%, but the impact on it has been monarch butterflies have decreased by 84%. So in the food chain, all the research we've seen is, it's generally beneficial. I think the conversation comes down to what's known as transgenetic modification, which is where a non-like species organism is injected into another plant to make it more resistant to the weed killers and sprays, and the amount of weed killers and sprays that are being used still retains in the food chain. We're just learning what happens in the biome. I think that when we use genetically modification to increase the natural attributes of a plant, working within it to make it more drought resistant, to make it grow faster, that's generally seen as safe. I think it's when it's starting to mix non-organic with organic that I think the concerns come up, and I think we have to be concerned about where fertilizer is used and its effect on biodiversity of seeds as well.
Once again, we are a room of entrepreneurs. Charles Chang is here with us tonight, and he's a success story with Vega. Sold for $550 million, and given the low loonie, you're probably a billionaire by about now. Congratulations, by the way. We talk about valuations. Do you think the trend is sustainable or the industry is in a bubble, Frank?
I'm not going to address whether it's in a bubble or not. I think valuations always go up and down in every market environment, including gold and everything else. But I think that the trend that has started is going to continue for a whole bunch of reasons. I think, you can do without a lot of things in the world, but you can't do without food. And the population is growing. We have to become more efficient, which begs entrepreneurs to start thinking about better ways to deliver foods. We're getting fussier with the information age. We're accessing more information. So now we demand to know what's in our foods. We want to trust what we're feeding to our children. And all of us are looking now for quality foods, but we also want convenience. So you want the two to come together, and that's challenging, but it also presents opportunities for companies to come up with great new ideas in terms of food creation and food delivery. And you've got this whole celebrity chef thing, David, they're the new rock stars now. Who would have thought that, 20-something years ago? But, it's sexy to be in food. And I think people get very... So I just don't think the trend
is that food is sexy as opposed to the food.
I would tell you, food is very sexy. So I think this trend will continue. Valuations will go up and go down. But I think that the food movement, which we're addressing in Modern Farmer, is here to stay.
Christine, you run a food company. Tell us about how that affects you.
I'm looking for that 8 times multiple. No. I actually think it's a great time to be in the food business. Young entrepreneurs and small companies are driving the change that big companies can't. Big companies lost over $4 billion in market share in the last 4 years, and over $4 billion has actually been invested in food in the last 4 years, a study by Rabobank. So you can see the industry is really in a state of transition and change, and what's exciting to me about it is it's the young companies that can drive the change. The big companies, their capital structure is very much tied up in the way they've been doing business. When 10 companies really run 40,000 SKUs or items in a grocery store, about 80% of what we eat. They're so invested they can't change, and it's the young companies that can. And the big companies crossing over need the small companies to actually elevate the chain. There's been so much consolidation. So I think we're going to see the multiples get stronger.
Speaking of multiples, David Hawksworth, you're going to have more than one restaurant in this city. And one thing that people tell me when they come to this city to visit, that they like the fact that your restaurant is at street level and accessible. So breaking news.
Yeah, well, we're going to finally, we're opening another restaurant, which is at 1017 West Hastings. It's been years in the making, and somebody reminded me a few years ago that when I was, I think, 18, I mentioned I wanted to open a pizza restaurant or something like that. And I've always loved pizza, and we're opening a restaurant that is Californian-inspired, Italian-inspired, little Spanish, all sharing, and it's Mediterranean flavors, and that's going to be called Nightingale, and yeah. And it's inspired from Aesop's fable of Hawk and the Nightingale. And it's about appreciating the dinner or the food or the meal that you have in front of you and not thinking about something that's bigger around the corner. And about Worth here came up with the name. It's fantastic.
Yeah, he thanked his wife, everyone, if you didn't hear that. As a man should.
Yes.
Well done, well played, in front of an audience, no less. Okay, Frank, let's talk about the fact that you've done mining. You're known very much for philanthropy in this city and around the world. We talked about your adventures in Syria when I interviewed you back in December. Now you're in the food business. You went into olive oil. I mean, what were you thinking?
About the olive oil? I don't know. It's like everything I do. I fell in love with an idea and I launched it and then wrote a business plan much later on. If anybody came here to learn anything about how you properly launch a new business, you probably should ask for your money back. Because everything I do, or it seems like almost everything I do, the things that I truly love, happen because I love an idea and then I just want to do it, and it just feels right, and my gut tells me that it's something that's going to be great, and I usually just get into it, make it happen, and then then I curse myself later about all the mistakes that I made and try and write a plan and make it a proper business. So it usually takes a little bit longer, but the good news is I do it because I really love those things, whether it's movies 25 years ago or whether it was gold with Ian Telfer at Gold Corp, 15 years ago. It's, I fall in love with the concept and then I do it. And the olive oil was simply, Kim Gallivan sitting here, she's my partner in the olive oil business and was really the reason I got into this. And we were just sitting around at her villa in Italy, cooking, which we all love to do, and tasting oil, and I asked what this great olive oil is. I thought, this is amazing. And next thing you knew, I was telling her we were going to be in the olive oil business and to start acquiring the properties on this right side of the hill where they had the best trees. And it became successful almost overnight. We did create the best olive oil in the world, and we won 2 years in a row, #1 in the world. And that was after just 2 years in the business. And the reason, and I think, the reason that we won is twofold. One, I kept telling people it was the best olive oil in the world. And I kept repeating it and repeating it and repeating it until everybody was convinced that it was the best olive oil in the world. And I'll tell you, and you succeed when people come to you and tell you have the best olive oil in the world. I go, yeah, okay. But the real reason it's the best olive oil in the world is because we took a great oil and made it fantastic. And the way we did it was by asking a lot of very simple questions. What are the elements that ruin olive oil? And then we went out and eliminated every one of those and made a very pricey olive oil. But it's the best because we eliminated all the issues with light, heat, oxygen, time that it sits in a warehouse. So when you buy our olive oil, it's nitrogen sealed, it's in a stainless steel bottle, so it eliminates all of those issues. We pick and press in 4 hours, so it's the freshest oil, and it goes right into those nitrogen tanks. We bottle, nitrogen seal the bottles, and ship it right away. When you buy our oil on the shelf, it is simply the freshest and best olive oil in the world, and it's really that simple.
Christine? You've been at Lululemon, you've been at Starbucks, and now you're at something that is a bit more of a challenge for you. Tell us about that.
I call this job innovating into a system in transition and dysfunction. And it's really hard. When you work with grocery stores who only buy 2 times a year, and many of them are even going to 1, you don't know what your business is going to do the next year in sales. So it's really difficult to gain the sales momentum as a small brand. As the grocery store has more and more relevant products in it, the small brands are the ones paying the slotting fees and paying the discounting to get on, moving from the natural into the conventional. And so it's a very challenging industry that looks at a lot of products that were originally made, convenience products, were made as profit units, as they were stable. And now as grocery stores are starting to go back to more fresh food, the margins are slimmer because there's more waste, and or they're starting to pretend to be restaurants. And they can't do it as well as David does. So, there's a change in the grocery store happening, and the change in the consumer is really striking. We're seeing 71% of people decide what to eat between 3 and 5 p.m. You see the young people eat in very different ways and cook in very different ways, much more like Europe, and they don't shop as often. So the consumer's changing, and so being able to take a pretty static industry and create the change that's transformational versus incremental, it's probably been one of the hardest things I've ever done because I don't control the end box.
But you like a challenge.
I've never met a problem I didn't like, my mother says.
Chef, you are now parlaying your skills into airline food. Tell us how that venture came about.
Well, we got an email over a year ago, and it said, from Air Canada, if we were interested in becoming a partner, and did we want to pitch for doing international business class. And I wasn't quite sure if this was spam or what it was, and because it's a big deal. Let's not forget, I didn't go to culinary school. I learned the hard way, and this has been a dream, life ambition, and to get an email like that, I'm like, okay, well, we really should, this opportunity, we can't miss this. It's unbelievable. So we went forward. Chad and Christian and all of our team put a great pitch together.
We're going to get you a new mic.
Okay, because I'm cutting. All right. Are we working? No? So I'll just soldier on here. But they went then to about 5 or 6 chefs, and they went across Canada, and we did a very thank you. Okay, we did a very I thought it was solid. I thought there was no way anybody could formulate anything close to this. And then we waited for about 4 or 5 months, and then and they offered us the opportunity, and it's been fantastic. And we've, bar one email last week, we've had really zero feedback, or negative feedback. That one guy, I don't know where he is, but but it's been amazing, and it's a great. The fact that we are in Vancouver, the head office, is on the East Coast for Air Canada, and for them to look at us and go with us has been a huge honor, and it's an admiration to our team. It's been.
Just a follow-up, do you think that consumers had written off airline food up until now?
Sorry?
Do you think that consumers had written off airline food up until now?
Maybe.
I have.
That's a tricky. I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, and but more often it's not. And I think we've been able to, just a little instance, like we went in and said, well, let's look at the vegetables, how you're preparing them, and they would blanch them and they would do all this kind of stuff, and it's like, well, let's put them in the tray with nothing, some olive oil and salt, and then and that, just looking at it from different eyes, it's been able to work out quite well. But I just want to say about the olive oil, Frank's olive oil, it is fantastic, and I really do love the fact that's like somebody with real passion and as gone forward with that, because when you go and buy olive oil in the stores, there's a super high percentage, I'm not going to tell you what the number is because it's really scary, it's rancid, it's not good. And that the fact that he's gone to such extreme for a finishing olive oil is amazing.
All right, let's talk about adding brand to your products. Christine, you guys have Derek Jeter as a brand ambassador. How'd you get that?
We were serving our food at an event for Ariana Huffington at the Huffington Post, And one of his people were there, and he had been considering getting into the food business. So she tasted the food, she loved it. She invited us to Derek's house in Tampa, which is fantastic. And so Met tasted the food, and he said, you guys are already doing what I want to see happen. And for him, the purpose was to see young athletes coming to camp knowing how to eat. And he was very concerned that athletes didn't see food as performance. And by the time young athletes learned to eat properly, they maybe had started to do things they shouldn't, like go on steroids or take drugs or enhancement for performance. And so his mission is to show that food can equal performance. And so that's why he's working with us. It's a passion project. We don't pay him. He actually owns 5% of the company.
Wow, terrific. Frank, same sort of concept here. You have Jamie Kennedy and Rob Feeney creating recipes for one of your food companies. Tell us about that.
Canada's Own. It's our soup line. Yeah, that was an interesting... I was watching Dragon's Den one night, and this lady was on pitching her company, and I thought, well, this is really an interesting concept. So I got a hold of Arlene Dickinson and got the introduction and ended up buying the company. But she had a great... This started in Ontario as a company called Ontario Zone. And the concept is very simple. It was to access local ingredients from well-known local farms in the area, make a product, and get a famous chef, Jamie Kennedy in Ontario, to make a recipe for it. And so I thought, well, that's a cool idea. You could probably do that in a much bigger way. So we thought, well, why just be limited to Ontario? Let's make it Canada's Own, and that way we can take it across Canada. We can deal with ingredients from everywhere. We can deal with chefs from different regions. And Rob Feeney and obviously Richard Jaffrey, who's the owner of Cactus, is a good friend of mine. So we approached Rob, and he agreed to do a couple of recipes for us. One of my favorites, which is the kale and barley soup. And Laura Daphne, who's your co-chair here, is actually running the company day to day, and she's doing an amazing job. I mean, her tenacity is on the borderline of fanatical on this. She makes me taste soups, look at labels, different colors. It's just an on and on thing. But she's done a great job of introducing the product here on the West Coast. It's in a lot of the stores here, and it's growing. It's doing very well in Ontario. And we're going to introduce other SKUs, different product lines, once the soup has more of a national distribution.
David, you were on the Food Network. You were a judge. A lot of people watch food shows. Do you think they're actually learning something from it, or do they just see it as food porn? Food is sexy, remember?
Sexy.
Well, I think you've got to be careful of the food porn that you watch, and that don't get caught watching the wrong one. But it's Jamie Oliver does a great program. Rick Stein does a great program. Anthony Bourdain does a great one. Guy Fieri, or whatever, no, he doesn't do a good one. So it's and I'll never see him, so I'm okay. But it's you just have to pick and choose what the right ones, and there's some really amazing educational shows out there for sure, and that. But I don't watch a lot of it. I just very it's like Jamie Oliver did a great show about it's called Sugar Rush and how much sugar children are getting, and we've got an 8-year-old, and I can see just how his mind is warped and how that he gravitates towards sugar, even though there's visibly no sugar in the meal, but I know it's in there, it's very interesting. So yeah.
There you go. Christine, we've heard you describe the concept of being a disruptor. Who are the disruptors in the food sector or in the food revolution?
Well, I think a lot of the small companies that are focusing on clean and nutritious food, and I certainly put ourselves amongst that, showing that you can provide accessible meals at a reasonable price. I think other disruptors are companies like Munchery, Blue Apron, some of the home delivery concepts that you're starting to see where you cook and prep your own foods at home that are cooked and prepared by somebody else following menus. I think are all new concepts that are starting to disrupt the food industry. And the whole, I think think we're all having trouble tonight. The home delivery, I think, is a really interesting concept because people want convenience. And I think that you're going to start to see a lot more pickup of fresh and home ingredients at grocery stores following that as well. So I think it's wide open right now.
We've asked some of the tables to come up with some questions, so we're going to go to table 1 for the first question.
Hi there. My question actually is for Frank, and a few of you have already mentioned that the world population will hit 9 billion, and I've heard estimates of 11 billion by 2100. And my question is this: is it economically and logistically a better idea to supply food across the globe through multinationals, or should there be a stronger local food movement as the world population continues to grow?
That's a really good question and a tough one. I believe that obviously addressing a population of that size is going to be very difficult, whatever route you take, and we will have food security issues in the future. I do believe that, and I think technology is going to have to find ways to address that problem. But I really am a real believer in creating local food systems. I think that they're easy to do. It's simply about education and providing the technology and the inspiration for people to do it. And I think that in the long term is probably the most environmentally friendly approach to addressing the food issue business, and it's doable, but you're up against a lot of big industry and lobby groups, and I think that it's going to be very difficult to fight the larger corporations who want to own that business of the food, the food business. So although I believe that we should create more and more local food movement local food supply movements, I think it's going to be difficult.
Let's go to table 31.
Could I maybe add on to that answer,
Sure.
Robin? I think what we all have to realize is we actually have the most inefficient food system globally that we ever could have. Less than 10% of food that's grown actually makes it into a person's mouth. So when you think about the water shortages we have, 40% of it gets thrown away at the farm, never even makes it into the system. And then all along the way through manufacturing, yield, et cetera. If we spend as much energy reimagining how we got food to market, and even frankly, if we just ate an ugly Brussels sprouts, broccoli, either from the grocery or from the manufacturer, we could have so much more food in the system. And I think that's what our voices need to be talking about, is increasing, not through fertilizer and chemicals, but just actually being more efficient across the whole system.
Table 31. We'll take the last
Hi.
question.
This is the Van City table. I'm one of the E-Series entrepreneurs you're raising money for, and by the way, the program's amazing, so thank you for donating. I did it, and I think everybody else who's thinking of doing a business should do it. Thank you, Christine, Anthony, and everyone. So the question we had is, what is the one thing you believe in that no one else believes in? This is a question that Google typically asks their new applicants. And so it's not a trick question. I'd be really curious to hear. Frank, you said something about GMOs may not be bad for us. You may be off of this one, but what is the one thing you believe in that no one else believes?
Well, thankfully,
take that one on.
Thankfully, I'm not applying to Google anytime soon, so I'm going to let Frank deal with that one.
Thanks. Modern Farmer magazine was an interesting idea at the right time. And when it was brought to my attention, it was in the concept stage when it was brought to my attention. And I thought, well, this is pretty cool. It sort of fits in with my view of my philosophy about food and where the food movement is heading. And so I, talked to a lot of people about getting into the magazine business, and they all told me I was crazy. And they were right in that sense. It's a horrible business to actually make money if you're just in the magazine business. And so I went ahead and did it anyways, as I do these things. And although a lot of people tried to talk me out of it. And I think that having done it now and learn a lot of things about the magazine business and learn a lot of things about creating a brand, I'm really excited that I didn't listen to those people. And we're on to something very big here. It's going to be much bigger than just a magazine. It's going to be a brand that I hope will be the first and last word in the food movement. And we're doing that by creating all sorts of other things around the magazine to develop the brand. So, yeah, that was the one thing.
We're running out of time, but one last question. How have you used your success to give back? Christine.
I think teaching and giving all the lessons that I've learned and spending the time to do that through the industries that I've been through and helping more companies grow, like with the value system that I've learned over the companies that I've helped build, I think is really important way to give back.
A few years ago, we started the Hawksworth Young Chef Scholarship, and we now go right across Canada. You have to be 28 or younger, work in a professional kitchen. We give almost $20,000 away that we fundraise. And if anybody wants to be a part of that, please let me know. And it was filmed. It's on the TELUS Optic Network. It's a fantastic scholarship. We'll list a bunch of ingredients. Everybody then puts a recipe together, takes a picture, sends it in, and then we go to Montreal, we go to Toronto, we go to Calgary and Vancouver. The 10 best all compete, and then we take 2 from each province, and they come do a black box. And we make sure that they get a stage in an international restaurant. So we have somebody over in Copenhagen right now. Before that was 11 Madison, and it's I want to see Canada on the map as far as culinary tourism, and I think that's there's just not enough people out there saying talking about the great restaurants that we have, and that's where we are.
And Frank, finally.
Well, giving back is something that I do more of than anything else by a very large factor. I've dedicated, starting 10 years ago, thank you. I've dedicated most of my life to giving back, and I'm involved in numerous things locally and internationally. But I'll tell you the one thing that's got my attention, and you know about this because you interviewed me a couple months ago, is this whole refugee crisis that's taking place in Turkey and Greece and other parts. And I've made 2 trips there now, and I had no intention to get involved in this thing. I was kind of drawn into it by a friend of mine, and but when I went over and actually witnessed what is happening, it is the most tragic situation that this world has seen since World War II, and I don't think a lot of people still get it. And it's very hard to describe unless you see it with your own eyes. And when you see it with your own eyes, it changes you. And it changed me. Like, I've come back a changed person. I keep going back. I'm going back again next month. We built a reception center, which is done now, which was my initial campaign. But, that's just the start. There's so many things that can be fixed that will make a very ugly situation more humane for millions of people. And save lives. And I think these things can be fixed. No one's addressing them. And we identified a whole bunch of things on my last trip that we're now going to start different campaigns for that are going to save lives and provide some basic humanity to some people that are living in the worst conditions I've never seen anything. I thought I'd seen everything. So this refugee mission, I think, is something we should all be very aware of, because it is going to affect all of us. And if it's not addressed in an intelligent way and with an open heart, it's gonna be a very bad situation for the entire world, for Europe, for us here. I think what Canada's doing is great. They sent the right message to all of those people in the United States that are, some of the stuff that's coming out of the US is really disgraceful, the way they're describing the situation when they had a hand in causing this in the first place. So I think that it's something that I would love if everybody got involved, learned a bit about it. It's really tragic. This is really a scary situation, and we have to do something about it.
Well, we want to thank you for your time tonight. We actually have gifts for you. Some of Frank's oil, olive oil, couldn't resist. And we have a gift from Absolute Spa. Wendy Liscar-Cochia donated that for tonight, so we really appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And Robin, we actually have a gift for you. So thank you very much. Our all-star panel, Robin Gill from Global News, everybody. Thank you for helping us tap into the food revolution, which is alive and well in Vancouver. We will post information and valuable links on our website.